If anybody here is undergoing chronic pain from an injury, they'll understand what I'm about to say. The hardest part is not recovering from the injury, it's living your life after the full recovery process has reached its pinnacle. Because then you realize, oh, there's no more places to go. What am I going to do now?
Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to this video today. I am very happy to be interviewing Doug Fairchild. So if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Andrea Furlan, a pain physician in Toronto, Canada. And you're going to hear Doug. He will tell you about his unfortunate events and how he overcame those pains in his life after a very serious accident. You will be inspired to change your trajectory of your pain if you're having any problems. So without any further ado, I welcome Doug to this channel.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here because a lot of my journey started with you. So this is a circle moment.
Very happy to hear that. So Doug, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little about who you are and where you live, where in the world are you? I know you're in a very warm place. So tell them where are you and who you are.
Well, I'm Doug Fairchild. I'm 55 years old. I'm a high school physical education teacher and tennis coach. I've been married to my wife, my high school sweetheart, for 32 years. I have a 27-year-old boy and a 25-year-old girl. I live just outside of San Diego in the wine country of Temecula, for any of you who are familiar with the geography of Southern California. And you and I were talking before we came on. It's 75 degrees and not a cloud in the sky here today. So we're loving it.
Excellent. And I am in Toronto and it's very cold. I didn't check the temperature because I stopped checking the temperature in January and it's always minus something. And we have a lot of white stuff around, but it's not falling snow, so it's good. Yeah. Okay, Doug. So why don't you tell us about your injury? I heard and I saw the pictures. We're going to show them here. And you had a very severe accident. Why don't you tell us about what happened?
Yeah, 7 years ago, I was in a high-speed motorcycle accident where a car came into my oncoming lane on a country road, and I made impact with the front end of an SUV at about 70 miles an hour. And that impact was absorbed in the abdominal sacral region from the belly button down to the mid thigh. I was thrown over the car and into the road on the other side of the car. And as the police report said, I came to rest about 70 feet away from the point of impact. So there was a lot of damage and trauma right after the actual impact. The major injury was the destruction of my abdominal wall, the lower abdominal wall from the belly button down to the pelvis, to include the oblique muscles on the side. So I can't turn or twist anymore because of the obliques being destroyed. All the muscle and fat tissue that forms your abdominal wall was destroyed, but by some act of something, the organs that are underneath that abdominal wall were protected, which is amazing. And that's why I'm still here talking to you today. Uh, in addition to, I'll speak about the abdominal wall in a second, but I also had a shattered pelvis. I have a plate and 7 screws they put that pelvis back together. One of the most difficult things is a severely damaged pelvic floor, which is why I would just refer to sitting being a very difficult thing for me. Um, the sacral plexus nerve network, those nerves that are found in L4 through S3 were severely damaged, and that causes me a lot of issues, which we'll talk about in a second. An avulsion fracture to my right hip. You'll see a screw going through that right hip. An avulsion fracture, for those who don't know, is it's the peeling of the bone. And so there is no healing it. And as it peels, it sticks into the soft tissue and it feels like somebody's kind of grinding something into your hip, which is a bummer. And a lot of neck spurs too from hitting my head on the pavement a few times. Thank God for my helmet. Um,
Yeah, so those were your injuries, right? The mainly the abdominal wall, the muscles that are gone, and you have to use like a corset, a brace.
Yes.
And the brachial plexus, for those of you who don't know, are all the nerves that exit the vertebra on those levels from lumbar to sacrum, and they go to the legs. So this is when we have a brachial plexus is the arm, and sacral plexus is the nerves that go to the legs. And when they're damaged, it causes neuropathic pain. So in summary, Doug had a lot of injuries to the soft tissues, muscles, bones, and nerves. So, requiring a lot of surgeries, right? So, why don't you tell us about the treatments and how you ended up with chronic pain?
Okay. So first of all, what I face on a daily basis as a result of the injuries. Yes, the injuries were acute and they've healed, but like you just referred to, there's a lot of long-term chronic damage in reference to nerves and so on. I also forgot to say I have a partially collapsed lung as well, which has, quite diminished my capacity for exercise in any way. But so what I have to do every day is I have to wear the corset, or I call it like a lycra bodysuit. And it goes from like my mid thigh up into my rib cage distance wise. And if I don't wear that outer compression layer, the intestines fall forward and sit down on my pelvis, and the pain is indescribable. And there aren't many people that are alive that are experiencing what I'm experiencing, to be directly honest with you. And then that outer compression layer is pressing on my intestines all day. So the pain standing is quite intense all day, every day. Um, because of the shattered pelvis, it wasn't put back perfectly straight. And so that's misaligned to my spine, which is causing a lot of nerve issues and spinal issues in terms of pain and messages from those nerves that run up and down throughout the spine. Um, I mentioned before the pelvic floor, my bladder and bowels, thankfully, I still have them under my control, but they have a much different capability nowadays. And there's a lot of inflammation down there and pain. So the pelvic floor makes it extremely difficult to sit. And then what really causes the most amount of pain, which you just spoke to, is like a peripheral neuropathy where, as a matter of fact, right now, I'm not catastrophizing because you told me not to. But I am in a little bit of a pain flare this last week because when I was bending over to pick something up, I've got a full sciatica thing going on right now, and down the left leg, out the left foot. Um, but the last thing I'll say about that is I'm just under a constant 24/7, 365 message from my nerves all the time that something is wrong and that I'm in pain. Yeah.
Mhm. By now, anyone watching this video is saying, "Oh, wow, that's a lot of bodily pain from so many injuries." And 7 years later, they're still hurting because things are not completely back to place. And but you had many surgeries, and I think you can talk now about the transition. So during the first 5 years, I understand you had many surgeries and many procedures and received many different medications for pain. And then in the last 2 years, something happened. So why don't you talk about that transition? What happened 2 years ago that as you described to me before, you now conquered your chronic pain. You can live a life doing the things that you like and the things that are important to you. And that's exactly the message that I want to pass to my patients or people who watch those videos, because it is possible. They don't need to resort to a lifelong depression and disability. It is possible to overcome. So your story is very enlightening. Thank you so much for sharing with us. So why don't you talk about that?
So, yes, I'm excited about this part of it. But first of all, I'd love to say that everything I'm going to speak about and you and I are going to talk about, I don't want people to think this is only applicable to people who have a specific injury. This type of stuff we're going to talk about, illness, disease, medical conditions, situational circumstances in life, any type of what I think of as chronic adversity as
Mhm.
opposed to chronic pain. But in my case, it's obviously a physical, structural thing. Um, so yeah, you're right. The first 2 years, I actually spent 6 months in bed the day after the accident, as I was undergoing surgeries, healing, and they were figuring out what they were going to need to do for me. And that was, whew, you talk about the psychological aspects of spending 6 months in bed. And then the next year and a half, getting me to 2 years, was in and out of hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, in bed, getting surgeries, and the ultimate ending surgery was a, a, uh, a mesh screen implant that runs across my entire abdominal area that is intended to hold my organs in place, even though the organs still move around. They didn't want to make it too tight. Um, so at the end of the 2 years, the surgeries were done. I spent the next 3 years doing what so many of us do, um, taking all kinds of prescription meds, self-medicating with alcohol and so on, getting injections, epidurals, nerve blocks, seeing pain management specialists. It was 5 total years of all of that. And if anybody here is undergoing chronic pain from an injury, they'll understand what I'm about to say. The hardest part is not recovering from the injury. It's living your life after the full recovery process has reached its pinnacle. Because then you realize, oh, there's no more places to go. What am I going to do now? I'm with what I have. And there might be some people watching this that are at the point where I got to 2 years ago, which was, I'll never forget it. It was December 26th, 2 years ago, the day after Christmas. I woke up. I was so depressed, so overwhelmed, so confused, so frustrated. I had just spent the last 3 or 4 years making poor choices with my diet, not being able to sleep, in and out of pain management clinics, taking medications, gaining unwanted weight. I mean, I get a little emotional just talking about it right now because I tend not to talk about these things, which I'll refer to later in my mental part. But I just, a change needed to happen. I, I needed to be better for myself. I needed to be better for my wife, my kids, my students at school, and this just wasn't working. And pain became my enemy. Discomfort was my enemy. Oh my gosh, that's a lot to live with. And I developed what I refer to in retrospect as an escape mindset. My mindset all day was, how can I escape this pain? And that is a horrible loop to be caught in, where all you think about all day is, what can I do to escape the pain? Well, when you're thinking that way, all you're doing is creating more pain. And then you're in this loop of pain that you can't see out of. And that's where depression and frustration and anxiety and all of these choices and lifestyles come into play. I was losing a battle. I was caught in a loop and I needed a way out. Pain had become my entire existence. So on December 26th, I decided I was going to take ownership for my situation. I was going to leave medicine behind in the Western way. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to trash Western medicine. I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it wasn't for the doctors and the pain management specialists and so on. But in terms of helping you with your life after they put you back together, the resources are quite limited. I know you know that. That's why you do what you do. Um, but I left the medical interventions and the pain meds and I shut them down immediately, which I don't recommend doing because that was really hard to go off of all those opiates overnight. There was quite a crash for a while there. And I decided I was going to go with an organic approach, self-empowered through my natural biology. And that's when I came to you and I found you. I was on YouTube, literally just typing in organic pain management, and one of your videos came up. And I watched it and I started cataloging through your library of videos, which are, oh my gosh, Dr. Furlan, you are
Mhm.
a complete resource for everything that is chronic pain, but also just living your best life in general. And I just went to town on your website or on your YouTube channel, excuse me. And I learned about concepts like anti-inflammatory diets. You have a video on that, or multiple probably. I remember a video, diet for nerve pain. I watched a lot of your videos on supplements that you can take that are good for you or not necessarily good for you, and which ones you're hearing the wrong things about and which ones you're hearing the right things about. You taught me about the concept of the autonomic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and the vagus nerve. You taught me about the concepts of neuroplasticity and how I can change my ways by repeating. I was stuck in a repeating way, and I could change that. Loved your last video in the snow. That was great. I'm going to tell you, though, of all the great things I learned from you, the one I think that is the most impactful is the concept of catastrophizing, because I was doing that a lot and I don't do that anymore, which is a beautiful thing.
Almost making me cry here.
Well,
Because
you've helped.
yeah, because you illustrate exactly what I want to do, share what I know, experience of almost 32 years, seeing people like you. And I, as a physiatrist, I get the people that had all those surgeries when the orthopedic surgeons, the neurosurgeons, the gastro surgeons, when they finish, like after 2 years, they say, well, I'm done. And they send to a physiatrist like me, that's my specialty, to do the rehabilitation. And then we get the pieces, we have to put the pieces together and help the person to live again. But again, what you just explained is so true, because pain paralyzes. Pain is that constant enemy that is there reminding you something is broken, something is injured. Why are you doing this? You're going to make it worse. And I need to spend a lot of time with people who had injuries and, broke so many bones and have neuropathic pain, telling them, no, you can do it. And they don't believe me. So I'm going to send your video. Every one of my patients in that situation that come from, those post-traumatic kind of chronic pain, they need to hear your message here. So I'm going to use this video with my own patients. So I think everybody is very curious to see how how did you put all of this together? Because I never heard about you. So I was helping you without knowing, until a couple of months ago, you reached to me with an email saying that you had a history to tell how you put together my teachings to your life. And it's so impressive how you combine all of these teachings that I give and created your own package. I would say your own treatment package. So why don't you tell us, how does, I call this a package, maybe you have a different name, but can you tell our audience today what is exactly that you started doing? So first you dumped your medications, and as I said, I don't recommend anyone to do that because the withdrawals might be horrible. So it might be better to do a tapering. But then what did you do? What did you start doing differently, that and how did that change your life? And
I will say on the dumping the medications part, I agree with you. That's not the good move for most people, but I have this unique part of my personality that my wife loves and hates, and that's that I'm an all or nothing guy. I don't do anything halfway or partially, and that can be a wonderful thing, or it can be a pretty difficult part of my character too. But in this case, it helped me a lot. So I would say one more thing too. When you were speaking about your patients and how you teach them, they have to be ready. It's scary. I was scared to do all that stuff, and I am of extremely. I've always, if you could probably tell by my personality, I'm a pretty confident. comfortable person. I've always been that way. And the word scared has never been any part of my vernacular, but I was scared. I was scared for what was going to happen in my life. I was scared to make a change. But thankfully, I'm an all or nothing guy, and I had your YouTube channel to inspire me. So, with that being said, I have put 5 things into place for myself that have replaced doctors, pain management clinics, medications, and self-medications. The first one, my medication, this is better than any pill you can take, and you refer to it on your YouTube channel. I have created what is called a high vagal tone. I have totally learned from you and then deep dives beyond what you've presented into the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, which I call the yin and the yang, and how a person in chronic pain's sympathetic is just on fire and the parasympathetic needs its inspiration, its motivation. And you taught me about the vagus nerve, and then I've gone deep dive on that. I've learned all the hacks that I can do for the vagus nerve, of which you presented in one of your videos.
How do you stimulate it? What do you do exactly to get your parasympathetic nerve system active?
So there are the hacks that a lot of people you'll find on the internet and in your videos, things you can do with like massaging the carotid artery or massaging the eye. The vagus nerve is connected to the vocal cords, and so any type of singing or humming is wonderful. Um, Cold water exposure, lavender. If you smell lavender, breathing, slow breathing with the exhale being the important part, not the inhale, because the exhale activates the vagus nerve. And then when you started to teach me about breathing, I decided, okay, well, I'm not like a yoga guy, but I'm going to start looking up yoga. And I can't do the physical part of yoga.
Mhm.
So I don't do that, but there are 3 parts of yoga that I do. One is called Nada yoga, Nada yoga. And what that is basically is union of the mind and body through sound and vibration. So whenever I am on a regular basis, I have my routines of sound and vibration that I expose myself to. And I've learned what my favorite sounds are and my favorite vibrations and how they calm me. By the way, when I come home from a day of work, there's nothing like the ocean waves on a YouTube video
No.
to calm me. So listening to music, making vibrations with my body, things like that. Another one is called Kumbhaka, which is a breathing pattern in yoga where you inhale through your belly area and hold it for 2 seconds. Then you pull the inhale up into your chest and hold it for 2 seconds. Then you pull whatever more you can inhale up into your throat, hold, and then long exhale. If I do that like 3 or 4 times, like everything that I was just feeling completely changes, like so much faster than a pill could do for me.
Wow.
And then the last one too, the average person breathes at 12 to 15 minutes breaths per minute, or excuse me, 12 to 15 breaths per minute. The goal in yoga is to get yourself, when you're in an excitable position, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when you're in a relaxed position, 4, 5, 6 breaths per minute. I have trained myself to be between 6 and 10 at all times. So right now I'm probably around 10. Oh my gosh, Dr. Furlan, you talk about being able to calm the pain in your body. I can't say enough about the vagus nerve
Yeah.
and breathing.
It's very powerful. Very powerful. Thank you so much. I think there will be a lot of people, and we can put links in the video description below. We can put links to those techniques. If you know a good video about that, we can help people to find good resources for that.
Great.
Excellent.
So the next thing I do is nutrition. You taught me about this concept called an anti-inflammatory diet. I think it was the title of one of your
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's an anti-inflammatory diet? And so I learned that from you. And I did a deep dive on Google, foods that cause inflammation, foods that are anti-inflammatory, and I made those changes. And I found what really is the key is to what you cut out.
Yeah.
It's, it's nice to what you add, but it's what you cut out. And so what I cut out was I became a pescatarian overnight. I gave up all meats except fish in one day. I haven't touched meat except fish in 2 years. Um, I have drastically limited processed sugar. I
Yeah.
have not had a sip of a soda or a candy or a cake or a donut or anything in 2 years. God, that was hard.
Maybe, Doug, maybe on a celebration, a birthday or anniversary? No? No?
No. I love the taste of it, but once again, Doug Fairchild's an all or nothing
Okay,
guy.
yeah, I
So,
get it.
um, fried foods. Uh, fried foods are extremely inflammatory, and so I gave up the French fries, gave up the fried anything. Dairy, couldn't give it all up completely. Love my cheese, and but dairy's extremely inflammatory. And the last one that was the hardest one for me, and I did it overnight, is alcohol. I didn't realize how toxic alcohol is to the human body.
Yeah.
And I was a bartender for
Wow.
years. Yeah. And I've never been an alcoholic, but I've always been a person that's enjoyed alcohol. So it was hard to give that up. But I got to tell you, life changing for somebody like me.
Especially for the nerve pain.
Oh, life changing. And when I go to an event at somebody's house and I have a beer or something like that, I can tell the next day, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Oh, wow.
I just had one beer, and it might be psychological. I don't know, but at least it feels that way. So it really comes down to what you don't eat.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me to give up the fast food, but I did because once again, in retrospect, I was at the bottom, Dr. Furlan. I was at the bottom. I didn't know where to go. And so I made that big change in my nutrition.
Good for you. Excellent. I'm enjoying this. Okay, keep talking.
By the way, some things I added that I eat a lot of, all nuts and seeds,
Mhm.
lots of dark berries. Learned that from you. Lots of leafy greens. Learned that from you. I don't drink anything in the day other than water, green tea, and black coffee.
Love that. Amazing. Yeah.
Black coffee, no sugar in my coffee. And then some of my supplements for those who care that are out there, dark chocolate, 87% or more, coconut oil, magnesium, mustard, turmeric, collagen, neem. I take neem, which is a plant from India, and a couple other things like alpha lipoic acid. Oh, D3. Yep, every morning, and C as well. I think I might be taking too much of that stuff, but
But you
anyway,
may be exposed to sun and maybe you don't need.
yeah, I'm outside every day, so that's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. Okay, so that's the first two. The third is taking care of my structure. And I know this sounds kind of strange. People are like, what does he mean? Weight control. Any excess weight weighs down on the body and causes all kinds of pain. Flexibility. As soon as your body becomes inflexible and your hamstrings tighten up and your back tightens up, pain is going to increase. Movement. I make sure that I am moving. I don't care how much it hurts, and it hurts. I move. I don't do what I used to do because I can't, but I still move. Um, and two more things on that are really important. Maintaining posture. It is so easy to drop your posture, and you have a video on that where you show your neck hunching over. It's so easy to drop your posture when you're in pain, and that just causes more structural pain. And the last one is my gait or my walking style, because right now I'm in that pain flare up and it's really on fire in my left heel. My left heel feels like it's on fire, and I am making sure I don't limp based on that and still walking on that left heel like I would normally so that I don't change my gait, so that I don't cause problems in my other side, my right hip, so on. So I found that taking care of your structure in those ways is massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you mentioned about weight gain, I think a lot of my patients they just give up, and it's so easy because they kind of they indulge themselves with food. They say, I'm suffering so much, I'm going to have this for the rest of my life, so I better enjoy everything that I want to eat, and they gain weight and they just don't care. And when you approach them and touch the issue of their weight, some people get mad. They say, don't, I had patients that they told me, don't tell me about my weight. I said, well, but that has a very direct correlation with more inflammation in your body, the adipokines. They don't want to hear. It's hard for me to even start a conversation. So I'm glad, again, that you are talking about this, because when they don't want to hear from me, they're going to hear from you. So what is the next thing?
Can I share one more thing on that then?
Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So I weigh 178 pounds and I'm 6 feet tall. So that's pretty prime weight for a 6 foot tall male that's 55 years old. I ballooned to 214
Oh,
in that 5 years, or excuse me, yeah, that 5 years you and I were talking about. Oh my gosh, I ate and drank for comfort all the time because I
yeah,
was in so much discomfort. I needed comfort.
yeah.
And I went from 178 to 213. Dr. Furlan, I am back to 178 with no increased exercise. People
Wow.
think exercise is the way you lose weight. And yes, it does help. But if you go on this anti-inflammatory diet, yeah, if you go on this anti-inflammatory diet that I'm on, pounds just shed off, especially alcohol, man. Alcohol just puts on the weight.
A lot of calories on alcohol. Yeah, but also when you eat an anti-inflammatory diet, you don't have space in your stomach to eat garbage because you're going to fill it with fruits and vegetables and a lot of healthy things. Then that they will satisfy you, and you don't feel hungry anymore. And absolutely, refined sugars is the no, 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 no. Yeah, good for your brain too, because we know refined sugars cause dementia and a lot of clogging of arteries that give nutrition to our brain. So brain health, if you want to have a long life with a functioning brain, do everything that Doug is recommending here.
One of the tricks I found too to satiate hunger is drinking water. So
Mm,
if it's a time of day where I'm feeling real like kind of craving or hungry and I want to go to the pantry and pull out chips or something like that, I just drink 2 pints of water
yep.
and I'm not hungry again for another 2, 3 hours. And I just hydrated my cells. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the fourth thing, and you speak about this, and you have a video, I think, about this. What it's like the circle of chronic pain and sleep, or which comes first, sleep problems or chronic pain? Didn't you make a video about that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and so I really started thinking about sleep. Oh my gosh. This might be the most powerful aspect is me doing what it takes to increase the quality of my sleep so that I can rejuvenate, regenerate, restore, reduce, and wake up the next morning. And yes, the second I wake up, pain greets me. But because of that amazing night of sleep I just had, I'm up for the challenge. So the things I do to ensure that I get good sleep, and I know not everybody's going to be able to do this because of their schedule, but basically, I shut life down at 6 p.m. Life for me is from 5:30 in the morning to 6 p.m. I don't eat or drink one thing after 6 p.m. I do not take part in any computer or phone after 6 p.m. I concentrate on dropping my breathing rate to 6, 10 at max. I will rotate heat and ice to the areas that are having problems. So I'll sit on a heating pad and then I'll put ice on there and then go back to the heating pad and then go back to ice. And that sounds like a hassle, but it's actually, once you build it into your routine, it's something that is very comfortable. And the last thing I'll take around 7 o'clock at night is magnesium. And that magnesium will help me regulate my bowels, but will also help me sleep deeper. At least
Mhm.
that's what scientists and doctors tell me. I cannot tell you how good I sleep, and I shouldn't be sleeping well given my situation because I don't even find comfort when I'm laying down. And I see a lot of comments in your guys' videos, how can I sleep when it hurts when I'm sleeping? Well, it hurts me when I'm sleeping too, but because of the things I just outlined I do, I overcome it. Last thing, when
Yeah,
I
yeah,
first went,
let me just stop for a while because this is so important.
yes,
I I want people to understand that sometimes they wake up and they think that they are waking up because the pain woke them up. But actually, they're waking up because their quality of sleep is not so good. So their sleep is superficial. And so anything that they do will wake them up. But when you work on the quality of your sleep and you are investing heavily, and for each person is different, like what is working for you may not work for another person. So they need to find out how they're going to adjust so they have a good quality sleep. They will be sleeping so deeply that then, even if they have pain during their sleep or they move, that will not be enough to wake them up. So I just wanted to reinforce how important it is to have a routine. So the video that I have about that is the 10 tips for a good quality sleep, for improving the efficiency of your sleep, including, again, things that you mentioned here, but many others, like keeping the light dark of your bedroom, noise down, temperature down, don't eat big meals, always go to bed at the same time. I tell people, don't put an alarm clock to wake you up in the morning. Put an alarm clock to the time that you have to go to bed, that you must be sleeping. So then you remember every day, including Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays, always go to bed at the same time because you're going to train your brain. So good. I just wanted to make that parenthesis because I felt so excited.
so I wanted to add one thing to that.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of videos out there. What do you do with the 3 o'clock wake up? I guess the average human tends to wake up at 3 a.m. for some reason, between 3 and 5. At least that's what all these videos would tell me. I've never watched any of them, but I tend to wake up at one time a night. The cool thing too is because I don't eat or drink, everything's digested, and I never have to empty my bladder in the middle of the night. So there's never a need to get up and go to the bathroom because I stopped drinking at 6 p.m. But anyways, I will do yoga laying on my back. I will do the deep breathing and ensure that I'm having long exhales, and I'll literally fall back asleep like 5, 10 minutes later. And it's like, dude, I just woke up in so much pain. And all of a sudden I wake up at 5:30 in the morning and go, whoa, I fell right back to sleep while I was doing that breathing.
Yeah,
So I can't say enough about sleep. And obviously you agree, it's massive.
it is. It's the free medication that we have. It's the
That and the vagus nerve, they're free.
They're free. Yeah.
Yeah. So one last part for me, and that's the mindset. And so what I've learned, you have a lot of talks on your videos about mind body and can the brain overcome pain and how does the brain interpret the pain message and the difference between structural pain and central sensitization and all of that. And I've loved all of learning all of that. And anybody who hasn't that's watching this needs to watch your videos on that. And I've come to this point in my life where I believe that the most important character trait for humans in general, but especially people in pain, is the character trait of equanimity. And equanimity means a, a calmness, a clearness, and a balanced mind, especially in the face of difficulty or adverse circumstances. So, an equanimous person is a person that is pretty much calm and clear and balanced all the time, but especially so when things are difficult or adverse. And I have come up with two major elements of the equanimous mind. There's like 15 that I came up with, but I really just jumbled them into two. The first one is the mentality of day by day. Depression is created yesterday. Anxiety is created tomorrow. Clarity and strength is created right now, today. I use the clock and not the calendar as my guide for time. The calendar measures out days into weeks, into months, into years. I don't care about those days into weeks, into months, into years. I only care about the seconds, minutes, and hours that a clock measures. Because if I stay within that hourly time frame, there's nothing I can't do. Because you taught me that if I don't catastrophize a pain flare at 7 a.m., it might be gone by 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. And so if I stay in that hour, some of my greatest days, Dr. Furlan, have been my worst days.
Mm,
I've forced myself and gone, what do I got to do to get to the next hour? And I've done it. And then 2 hours down the road, something's happened to me. I've met
mm,
somebody or something happened with a student. And I think back, oh my gosh, if I had given up and catastrophized and gotten anxiety about the future or depression about the past, that wouldn't have happened for me. And so the last thing I'll say about that day by day is I am 100, once again, all or nothing, Doug. I am 100% dedicated to not letting my body's messages dictate my movements throughout a day. I get up and go to work every single day. I get up and be a good husband, a good father, a good community member, a good friend, a good son, as best as I can every single day. And I really take a lot of pride in that because I have only called in sick for work 2 days in the last 3 years. We're talking about a person of high impact chronic pain. Calling in sick for work is a pretty big effect of that, as well as I even just got my master's. I spent 2 years in my master's program. I wrote papers, took tests, all because of these changes we're talking about that I've made day by day. Stay within the hour. Don't think about tomorrow. Don't consider yesterday. And there is no amount that you cannot do. That was day by day. And then the other one is attention.
mm,
So I've learned that where I direct my attention, I create my energy.
mm,
Wherever my attention is, my energy is being created by that. And then that energy creates the space around me so that the world that I'm living in, the people I'm interacting with, and all the space around me feeds off of my energy. My energy feeds off of my attention. If I can put my attention to places that serve me, I create an energy that serves me and serves everybody around me. And then I'm no longer thinking about pain. I'm thinking about where's my attention. And for those first 3 years or 5 years, excuse me, my attention was on my pain. I told you I was in a battle. That's all I thought about. Well, what kind of energy is that going to create? It's going to create an energy of a loop of pain and suffering. Now, whenever I think about my pain, I direct my attention to something within my five senses.
mm,
I find something in my environment that appeals to my sight or my hearing or my taste or my touch. Something that appeals to that. And that immediately removes my attention from the pain that I'm in. And all of a sudden, this is where I don't know yet whether pain is a psychological thing or not. Because why am I not feeling pain right now when I'm talking to you? It's because my attention is totally on you. But everything is still there that causes me pain all the time.
yeah.
So if you can direct your attention to create your energy and you live day by day, you will have an equanimous mind that is calm, clear, and balanced in the face of all adversity and all difficulty.
I love that. And just to rewind a little bit, when you say you don't know if this is psychological, every pain, every single pain is both physical and psychological,
Mm,
all of them, every single pain. We cannot separate because in the brain, in our pain is made in the brain, and those the areas of the brain that are activated when we are saying I am in pain are both the biological areas and the emotional areas. They are linked. So we cannot separate the mind from the body. We cannot separate the emotions from pain. So they're always both biological, physical, and psychological. And that's why it's so important to understand. I think what you're explaining here is that shifting your attention, there is a lot of research, Doug, to back this up. People do this in laboratory. They bring people, they provoke pain, and then they distract the person. And then the person says, okay, are you still stimulating me and causing pain? And the researchers, the people who are, experimenting, then say, yeah, you biologically, I'm still stimulating your body, but you are not feeling pain because your mind was you're shifting attention to something else. So this is a technique that it's possible to teach a person with chronic pain, and you learn this and you're practicing this. And I would say you learn this by yourself, and I'm so glad that I had some part in teaching you this. But I would say for someone who is listening this for the first time, and you may say it's too hard, too complicated, there are professional help. There are people, professionals who are trained to teach you these techniques if you can't learn by yourself and practice by yourself, because it takes a lot of energy to come to this point where Doug has arrived. But these people can be psychologists, psychotherapists, counselors, social workers, coaches, to teach you how to think about differently about your pain. So don't get discouraged if you're watching this video and you're saying, I can't do this by myself. You're not so resourceful as Doug is, and you may think that it's not possible for you to do. Seek some help. Talk to your doctor, talk to a nurse, to an occupational therapist. They can guide you how you can find some professional help. Because another thing that I also want to say is, Doug, some people have pain associated with trauma, either psychological trauma at the time of the pain or past traumas, childhood trauma, abuse, neglect, or bully, or some problems with insurance, some problems with the compensation board, or they were in war and they were victims of an accident during a war. So there was a lot of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So for people who have psychological trauma, they also probably they will need some additional professional help to help them to separate what are their emotions and implement those suggestions that you're making here. I just wanted to make this parenthesis because it may not be so straightforward for someone in that situation.
I think that's wonderful and really well stated. I totally agree with you. I believe that we give life to everything through our words, our thoughts, and our actions. So if somebody listening to this right now would go, yeah, everything that is reality in our own mind is based through our thoughts, our speech, and our actions. I found that not thinking about, not speaking about, and not reacting to the circumstances of my situation goes a long way to squashing it. And once again, for 5 years, that's all I did was think about, speak about, and react to. And as soon as I moved away from thinking about, speaking about, and reacting to, and one more thing on that too, I found that keeping it to myself, this is my psychology,
Mm-hmm.
is the greatest thing ever. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want any empathy. I don't want any sympathy. As a matter of fact, I don't even want anybody to know about my situation. All my new students this year have no idea what I go through. They just see the same Coach Fairchild that every other student saw before the accident and after the accident. And that's not a point of arrogance or bragging. It's just a point of mindset. Like, put my attention somewhere else on a place that serves me. But I get what you're saying. Not so easy for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't easy for me. But I think it might have been easier for me than the average person. But regardless, the last thing I'll say in that, regardless of whether it's easy or hard, it's got to be done. It, if you want to break free,
Yeah,
it's got to be done. You got to learn how to place your attention.
yeah. I would say there's no other option.
I agree. It's of all the things we talked about here. I mean, obviously, the high vagal tone is a great thing in nutrition and structural and sleep and living day by day. But really, what it all comes down to
Mhm.
is where you put your attention is where you put your energy.
So that's amazing. So, Doug, if you have, like, if you're seeing right now a person, imagine that there's a person out watching this video, and that person is in that situation that you were December 2022, that you said.
Yes,
In that situation, taking a lot of pain pills, overweight, depressed, not having any prospects that things would change, not sleeping well, talk to that person right now. What advice would you give to that person? If you, I know all of this that you mentioned is important, but if you could tell them like a one major thing that would motivate them to change and to think differently, what would you say? What advice would you give to them?
I would say that there's that old saying, a mountain is made a stone at a time, or whatever the saying is. I think of it the other way. The mountain has already been built, and that's a mountain that I was facing, and that some people watching this might be facing. And that mountain can be overcome, but you got to pull a stone away at a time. You don't have to do it all overnight like I did. You
Yeah,
can do it a stone at a time. And um, I would say this: is there anybody more important or anything more important in the entire world than you?
yeah,
Because if you're not good for you, you can't be good for your loved ones and you can't be good for the world. So why not invest 100% into you
yeah.
in whatever way that is? And I wrote a little poem last night. Can I read it real quick?
Thank you. That's a wonderful gift. Please
Yeah,
go
this happened at 3 o'clock in the morning in my wake up time.
ahead. And you
I
didn't
was
do your meditation.
Yes, so I don't have it memorized. So excuse me, I have to read it off of my phone
Please
as
go
I
ahead.
typed it into my notes in the dark. This is the place I got to as a result of everything we've talked about today. I call this pain can be. Pain can be a guiding light. Pain can be the luminary of the soul. Pain can reveal a need for change, and it can be a catalyst for growth. Pain can unveil what truly matters and light the path to realization. Pain can expose vulnerability and generate humility. Pain can be a grounding force that encourages authenticity. Pain can awaken capability, adaptability, and courageousness. Pain can elevate compassion and empathy. Pain can foster strength and resilience. Pain can teach the art of relinquishing control and letting things go. Pain can be all of these things and so much more if you let it be so.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful gift you're giving to us. There's nothing like your own personal experience. Lived experience teaches more than any video that I could make. I think this is very inspiring. And I like just to finish this, reminding people that Doug and I, we are here to inspire you and to motivate you to change. This is not medical advice, neither me or him. Um, and for all of you who are watching this, please, if there is any emergency while you're watching this, please call an ambulance or go to the nearest emergency department. And this video is only for educational purposes. And Doug, I'd like to send you a gift. I don't know if you have a copy of my book. This is I'll send this to you on the mail. And when you mentioned that the mountain, that's exactly the analogy that I used for conquering chronic pains, like conquering a mountain, one
Oh, I
step
love
at a
it.
time. Yeah. And
Yeah.
the 8 steps mean, the first step is retrain your pain system, Step 2 is control your emotions. 3, get quality sleep. 4, fix your diet. 5, get help from others. Don't do it alone. 6, check your medicine cabinet, what you're taking, your vitamins, or dump your medications or injections, those kind of things that are not working. 7, make room in your toolbox. I talk about exercise and movement. And 8, focus on your goals. So these are conquering the mountain. And Doug, I'll also send you my new book. It's not released yet. It's going to be released on April 1st, 2025. And this is more like a workbook for people to write. And it's a self-knowledge and self-discovery journey. It's 90 days for them to do daily reflections about the uniqueness of their pain, because your story is different from anyone else in the world. The kind of injuries you had, your journey, nobody in the world will have something similar to you, but you discovered your uniqueness and was able to overcome that. So I will make sure that to get your address and send these 2 books signed for you on the mail.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you so much for sharing this story, amazing story with us today. I'm so glad that you reached out to me and wanted to tell your story to people in my channel. I'm pretty sure there will be someone that will be touched by your testimonial here. And I would invite them to write their comments here. And you can answer too, Doug, when you see them posting comments, feel free to answer. I'm pretty sure they will ask you questions, and feel free to do that. Thank you so much again, and hope to see you again in the next video. Goodbye.
Thank you.